Addressing the nation earlier this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa said South Africa has secured 9 million vaccine doses from Johnson & Johnson. This would commence with delivery in the second quarter, so basically from April onwards. Now, the global healthcare group Johnson & Johnson has contracted Aspen Pharmacare, which is the local pharmaceutical company, to manufacture those COVID-19 vaccines here in South Africa. It's reported that Aspen Pharmacare could start production of those COVID-19 vaccines from Johnson & Johnson by late March or even early April if all approvals are in place. It's expected that all the vaccines procured, or produced, should I say, will be exported to Johnson & Johnson and will actually form part of Johnson & Johnson's global supply inventory. Let's chat now to Stavros Nicolaou, who is the Group Senior Executive for Strategic Trade at Aspen. Stavros, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Always good chatting to you. Let's talk about where in the process we currently are exactly. You've of course received the go-ahead, but are you still waiting for what is it? Is it ingredients, whatever the dosage might be, or what elements are you currently waiting for before you actually start manufacturing or producing the items?
Rabila, thanks, and good afternoon to you and all the SABC viewers. The arrangement that Aspen has with Johnson & Johnson is very much a contract manufacturing arrangement, as you said. J&J have contracted us to manufacture a certain volume, which hasn't been determined as yet, of vaccines. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you would have seen the data for that vaccine became available on Friday. The data was along the lines of what is expected, and it offers yet another choice, an option for vaccinators in the vaccination armamentarium.
Yeah.
All of this, of course, means that we're in the process, as we've indicated publicly previously, of receiving a technology transfer from Johnson & Johnson, and we then go through what we call validation, batch production, and ultimately into commercial batch production. We don't have fixed dates around when that will happen exactly,
okay.
But there was an announcement from Johnson & Johnson that we could be going into production sometime in quarter two, but of course these dates are fluid and will be confirmed later on when we have the final details. There are a number of steps, of course,
sure,
that one has to undertake to get to commercial batch production.
Stavros, what actually happens then with the authorization, right? I mean, the South African, the health authorities and the like as well, all sort of need to get involved in trying to authorize this and make sure it is approved by standard bodies and the like as well. How far are we with regards to that? Would it only happen once, Johnson & Johnson give the vaccine over to you, then you have to send it through? Or what exactly is the process there?
So the vaccine remains a Johnson & Johnson vaccine, so they are responsible globally and in South Africa for getting the product approved. Our drug regulatory agency in South Africa is called SABC. So SAPRA would have to approve the product. Johnson & Johnson have indicated globally that they will be submitting for what is called emergency use authorization. This is an expedited approval process that has been put in place globally, and a similar process would be applied in our country precisely because we are dealing with an emergency situation.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that the review of their information will be done on a shortcutted basis. There will be no shortcuts. It's just an emergency review, which means the regulators apply additional resource to approve this product. So Johnson & Johnson will be shortly be filing for approval both abroad and here in South Africa. Aspen will have to independently also submit manufacturing data for approval.
Sure.
Our own regulatory agency, SAPRA, as I indicated earlier.
Yeah.
This is all being done parallel to the technology transfer, the validation processes that I spoke about earlier.
Okay. All right. Very interesting there. the vaccines themselves, I mean, as you noted, the authority over their sale is not necessarily up to you. It still has to all go through Johnson & Johnson, of course, right? But what actually happens in the case of, for example, the Serum Institute of India has a hold over the licensing, so to speak, of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, that is. So you'd have to negotiate with them. Are you looking at doing something of that sort, where in South Africa you'd have to negotiate with Aspen Pharmacare in order for South Africans to get the vaccine, or is this going to always remain a Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine?
Rabila, thanks. That's an excellent question. And I think the starting point for Aspen was, we had developed sterile capability and capacity in our Port Elizabeth facility.
Yeah.
And at the outbreak of the pandemic last March, we had a look at how can we best assist the country and the continent, and even more globally, because we sell products that are used, anesthetics and muscle relaxants that are used for ventilation, both here and abroad. We were one of the forerunner companies for dexamethasone, which is probably still the drug that's had the most impact in reducing mortality and morbidity rates for critically ill COVID patients. Certainly, that's about the best therapeutic option we have right now. So we were involved in many different aspects at the outset, but we looked at our sterile capacity that we've invested heavily in South Africa, and we said, well, how can we assist South Africa, the continent, and the world? And we looked at this and we said, well, we have the ability to manufacture vaccines.
Yeah.
And main thrust there was that we manufacture vaccines and we make these available. So we will continue with respect to the J&J product, the vaccine product, and your question. We will continue looking at a manufacturing solution here.
Yeah.
And some of that we produce will no doubt, and this is all to be determined, of course, but will no doubt stay on the African continent and will be used in African patients. But more importantly, I think we are demonstrating and profiling the manufacturing and technical prowess that exists in our country here, South Africa, because, Johnson are a significant global player. I mean, 100%. To put it into context, market cap is bigger than South Africa's GDP.
Yeah.
So for them to have selected Aspen, South African company, speaks volumes for the confidence that they have in our country and Aspen's and manufacturing capabilities.
Stavros, let's chat finally just about the impact this has on your business. I mean, yes, fine. Of course, Aspen is trying to do as much as possible to not just inoculate the rest of the world, but certainly ensure the safety of South Africa primarily to a large extent. And we'll commend you, of course, for that. But this must have some sort of high-profile spin as well for Aspen. What does it do for Aspen Pharmacare?
So, look, Aspen is today very much a multinational company that operates out of South Africa. Our roots are still firmly entrenched in South Africa. So I think what this does is it profiles Aspen in a slightly different direction, in that we are an emerging global steriles player. Yeah. And it strengthens our global sterile networks in the first instance. And secondly, it's certainly accretive to our aspirations around moving into sterile technologies and sterile capabilities. Sure. So I think all of this, it's obviously reasonably high profile given the nature of the pandemic. Yeah. And I think it assists our international networking and profiling with respect to our steriles capability, 100%. Which at this point in time is a very sought after global capability.
Stavros Nicolaou, Group Senior Executive for Strategic Trade at Aspen Pharmacare. Thank you so much. Always good chatting to you. We'll obviously keep abreast of proceedings as J&J get their approval with regards to this one. Much needed, and we'll certainly have a chat on that one. Stavros Nicolaou from Aspen Pharmacare. That does bring things to an end for this bulletin. Your weather details coming up next. Do remember, though, that On Point is back at the top of